With a stroke of my pen on day one, we're going to stop the transgender lunacy. And I will sign executive orders to end child sexual mutilation, get transgender out of the military and out of our elementary schools and middle schools and high school. And we will keep men out of women's sports. And that will likewise be done on day one. Should I do day one, day two, or day three? How about day one, right? Under the Trump administration, it will be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Former President Donald Trump has never shied away from sharing his thoughts on major cultural and social issues. One of the more recent and divisive topics he has focused on is the idea of wokeness. To understand Trump's position and the broader debate around wokeness, it's essential to delve into what the term represents, why it has become a focal point in political discourse, and why Trump and his supporters oppose it. The term wokeness originated in African American vernacular English, initially referring to being aware of social injustices, particularly those involving race. Over time, however, it has evolved to encompass a broader set of progressive ideas, including gender equality, LGBTQ+ rights, environmental activism, and a commitment to addressing systemic inequalities. For many, wokeness symbolizes a heightened awareness of societal issues and the pursuit of equity and inclusion. On the flip side, critics argue that wokeness has become overly politicized, rigid, and punitive. They claim it fosters a cancel culture where dissenting voices are silenced, traditional values are undermined, and people are excessively scrutinized for their past actions or statements.
Woke has to stop, because along with everything else, it's destroying our country. We're going to stop woke. Woke is bullshit.
Donald Trump has positioned himself as a leading voice against wokeness, which he views as a threat to American values, free speech, and individual freedoms. Throughout his presidency and beyond, Trump frequently criticized what he referred to as the woke mob or woke culture. In his speeches and social media posts, he framed wokeness as an ideology that seeks to shame and divide Americans while pushing a far-left agenda. For Trump, the battle against wokeness is not just about politics, but also about preserving traditional cultural norms. He argues that wokeness promotes victimhood instead of resilience, erodes patriotism, and imposes a sense of guilt on individuals for events in history they had no part in. Trump has also claimed that wokeness infiltrates education, media, and corporations, turning them into platforms for activism rather than spaces for objective discussion and free market principles.
Americans are exhausted, trying to keep up with the latest list of approved words and phrases and the ever more restrictive political decrees. Many things have a different name now, and the rules are constantly changing.
One of Trump's primary critiques of wokeness is its association with cancel culture. Cancel culture refers to the practice of publicly calling out individuals or institutions deemed to have violated social norms, often leading to boycotts, firings, or public shaming. For Trump, cancel culture is a manifestation of intolerance and an attack on free speech.
The goal of cancel culture is to make decent Americans live in fear of being fired, expelled, shamed, humiliated, and driven from society as we know it. The far left wants to coerce you into saying what you know to be false and scare you out of saying what you know to be true. Very sad.
He has argued that this culture of silencing is un-American, emphasizing the importance of open debate and the exchange of ideas. Trump often portrays himself as a victim of cancel culture, citing examples where media outlets and tech platforms have censored or deplatformed him. He uses these incidents to rally his base, presenting himself as a defender of free expression against a woke establishment.
If I have to say this, parental rights. Can you imagine we're going to stand up for the parents? Of course you're going to stand up. That we even have to say it because they are trying to destroy parents. We will get critical race theory out of our schools, out of our military, and out of every part of our federal, state, and local governments. And at long last, every parent in America must be empowered to opt out of the forced indoctrination in the classroom.
Trump has been particularly vocal about wokeness in schools and universities. He opposes critical race theory, CRT, an academic framework that examines systemic racism in laws and policies. Trump argues that CRT and similar teachings indoctrinate students with anti-American views and foster division by focusing excessively on race and oppression.
And to send their child to the public, private, charter, religious, or homeschool of their choice. We will also keep men out of women's sports, if you don't mind. When we just can't do this, it's so, it's very demeaning, frankly, to women. I don't understand.
During his presidency, Trump signed an executive order to promote patriotic education, aiming to counter what he saw as the negative influence of woke ideology in schools. He called for curricula that highlight America's achievements and downplay its historical flaws. This approach resonated with many parents and conservatives who felt that schools were straying from traditional educational goals.
With the military, we're ending woke immediately. I ended woke. Totally. And then they, in their first week, they reestablished it. It's crazy. They pay instructors hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
Trump wastes no time in addressing what he sees as a fundamental issue plaguing the military today, the infiltration of woke policies. He firmly asserts that these policies have no place in an institution meant to defend the nation. The military, he explains, has been bogged down by ideological agendas that detract from its core mission, protecting the American people. For a country with such a strong history of military excellence, this shift is seen as both unnecessary and harmful.
It literally, they want our military to be woke, and it's just not going to happen. You read in Hawaii where they had the horrible fire where they have people going there.
Instead of prioritizing combat readiness and mission-critical training, there's a growing focus on teaching controversial ideologies that, according to Trump, serve no purpose in the military's day-to-day operations. Training sessions are reportedly being consumed by topics that some critics argue have little to do with defense and strategy. This shift, he points out, not only wastes time, but also undermines morale and focus within the ranks. Donald Trump believes that this distraction compromises the very integrity of the armed forces, which should be laser-focused on readiness and effectiveness. A striking anecdote from the recent wildfires in Hawaii highlights Trump's concerns. In one of the most devastating disasters in U.S. history, communities were left scrambling to find their loved ones and rebuild their lives. Yet, even during this crisis, workers brought in to help were reportedly required to complete mandatory training sessions centered on woke ideology before they could begin their jobs.
And before they bring them on board, they have to study woke for a week. Can you believe this? In other words, everyone's wanting to get back to their home, finding the bodies.
Imagine the outrage and frustration of those desperately waiting for assistance, only to learn that bureaucratic red tape and irrelevant training sessions were delaying help. People were grieving, homes were reduced to ashes, and time was of the essence. But the process was slowed by what Trump describes as misplaced priorities. These sessions, he argues, serve as a stark example of how this ideological agenda has spread beyond the military and into other critical areas of governance and disaster response.
Such a tragedy. You don't read about it too much anymore, but hell is going on over there. And they want to give them classes in essentially wokeness. Can you believe? So, you've seen it. Well, we'll end that very quickly.
Trump passionately argues that this misplaced focus doesn't just waste time and resources, it risks lives. The military's purpose is clear: to protect and defend the nation. For this, every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine needs to be equipped with the best possible training, tools, and leadership. When the focus shifts to secondary agendas, the entire system suffers. Donald Trump is adamant that this issue will be addressed immediately and comprehensively. Ending woke policies, he suggests, will not only streamline the military's training programs, but also send a clear message that operational readiness is the top priority. Soldiers must be prepared for the challenges they'll face in real-world combat scenarios, not distracted by politically charged topics that have no bearing on their duties.
With a stroke of my pen on day one, we're going to stop the transgender lunacy. And I will sign executive orders to end child sexual mutilation, get transgender out of the military and out of our elementary schools and middle schools and high school.
For Trump, the anti-woke movement serves as a powerful political rallying point. It allows him to connect with a base that feels disenfranchised by changing cultural norms and resentful of progressive activism. By presenting himself as a champion of traditional values and common sense, Trump taps into a widespread frustration with what many see as an overreach of political correctness.
And we will keep men out of women's sports. And that will likewise be done on day one. Should I do day one, day two, or day three? How about day one, right? Under the Trump administration, it will be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
In his rallies and media appearances, Trump often invokes the idea of fighting back against wokeness to energize his supporters. He portrays the struggle as a battle for the soul of the nation, emphasizing themes of patriotism, individual freedom, and pride in America's history and accomplishments. Donald Trump's crusade against wokeness reflects a broader cultural and political divide in the United States. For his supporters, Trump's stance embodies a defense of traditional American values and a rejection of progressive overreach. For his critics, it represents a refusal to acknowledge systemic issues and a strategy to inflame cultural tensions for political gain. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future uploads.